Welcome students to the online study. We will see the explanation of lesson number 3, Ranga's marriage, from our textbook Snapshots. Let's have the explanation about this lesson. Ranga's marriage. It is a humorous story about a village boy who has come home after studying in Bangalore. The story is located in a village named Hosahalli, a village in the former Mysore state. Now it's a part of Karnataka. There is no mention of this village in any geography book. Now author says that this is the incidents taken place in a village called Hosahalli. Previously it was in the Mysore state. Now it's a part of the state of Karnataka. Now this place is very less significant. That means it has no importance. How we know that it does not have any importance? Because even there is no mention about this village in the geography book or in the atlas book. There is no description, there is no mention about this village. So less significant village. 10 years ago, the village didn't had many people who knew English. Now the author is speaking about 10 years back. No one in this village knew English. No one in this village, they understand English or speak English. Ranga, the accountant's son, was the first person from the entire village who had been to the other city, who left his village in order to study in Bangalore. He alone knew English. There are many people now in the village who know English. Now author speaking about 10 years ago, 10 years back, when no one in the village knew about English. They were not able to communicate in English. No one understood English. But village accountant's son, he had been to Bangalore. Thus he came back after his studies, and he is the alone person, he is the only person who now understood English. Now when Ranga is the accountant's son who had been to Bangalore for his studies. He was the only person who got a chance to go out of their village. So this is the speciality about Ranga, that he had been the first person who had gone out of their village for the purpose of education. When Ranga came back to the village after studying in Bangalore, his homecoming was a great event. Now see here, when Ranga came back from Bangalore after his studies were complete, this homecoming event was considered to be a mega event. It was considered to be a great event. And the village people, they rushed to the house of Ranga to have a look at him. Now why it is so special? When someone go to foreign country and return back to his own country or return back to his own home, it can be considered as significant event or great event, because a person who had gone abroad, he had come back to the nation, he had come back to his home. But what about Ranga? Ranga had just gone to Bangalore, and when he had returned back to his home, it was considered to be the greatest event. It was considered to be a very significant event. His homecoming was considered to be a significant event for the people of that village. Why? Because he was the only person to get out of their village. Moreover, the people of the village, they were attracted towards Ranga. There happened to be a great crowd or multitude of people gathered around the house of Ranga. They went and stood in the courtyard with surprise, seeing so many people accumulated nearby the house of Ranga. Ranga came out with a smile on his face. Seeing this much crowd gathered in front of his house, Ranga came out with a smiling face. Everyone was surprised to see that Ranga was the same as he had been 6 months ago. Now, why these people? They have come to the house of Ranga. One important thing. They wanted to know whether Ranga is the same or not. They wanted to know whether he is changed or not. Because there are many people who go abroad, who go out of their village, and they change themselves. They adopt the new style of life. They adopt the new style of fashion, pattern of life, modern lifestyle. So the people wanted to know whether Ranga is the same or he is changed. Everyone was surprised to see Ranga, that he was the same as he had been 6 months ago. Finding that there was no change in Ranga, the crowd dispersed and disappeared from that spot, just like a sugar crystal dissolves or disappears in the mouth of a child. See this. The people, when they knew Ranga is the same, nothing or no change happened over Ranga, they disappeared from the spot. When everyone left, the narrator continued to stay there. Ranga noticed him. He came near to him. He greeted him respectfully. The narrator wished that he might get married soon. Now, the narrator describes the event of Ranga's homecoming and his meeting with Ranga. So after the crowd departed from that place, this narrator, who is the one of the best friend of Ranga, he stayed there so that the crowd should be dispersed. Then he wanted to see Ranga. Ranga noticed this, and this narrator, he came near to him, greeted him respectfully, and the narrator given him a kind of blessing that Ranga should get married soon. Now this is the wish of narrator, Ranga's friend, that he should get married soon. This is a strange type of blessing that was given by the narrator to Ranga. That afternoon, Ranga came to the narrator's house with oranges. The narrator observed that Ranga was a generous and considerate fellow. That afternoon, the narrator, when he was in his house, Ranga visited narrator's house with oranges. And on that time, the narrator thinks that this Ranga is a very generous and considerate fellow. It would be a fine thing to have him married and settle down and be of service to society. Now this is the viewpoint of narrator. He wants Ranga, a generous and considerate fellow, to get married because it's a fine thing for him to get married, settle down and be of service to society. In that way he can render service to the society. So he asked Ranga, whose full name is Rangappa, in short we call Ranga, when he planned to get married. Now this is a course of conversation that the narrator and Ranga had. The narrator asked about his plan regarding his marriage. He asked when he is planning to get married. He told the narrator, Ranga told the narrator that he was not going to get married fast. He need to find the right girl. Now this is a very simple answer given by Ranga. He says that he does not have any plan to marry now until he find a suitable and right girl. The girl should be mature enough, not a very young girl. Now perception about that girl, the Ranga holds a point of view or perception regarding the girl whom he will marry. That girl should be mature, not a very young girl. If he did not get a suitable girl, he would like to remain a bachelor. A man should marry the girl he admired. This is the point of view he shared with the narrator, that he want a mature girl and he want to marry a girl whom he admired. Moreover, if he is not able to find such a girl, better is to remain a bachelor. When the narrator, he came to know about this type of viewpoint regarding the marriage of Ranga, the narrator was distressed that Ranga had decided to remain a bachelor. The narrator then made up his mind that he would get Ranga married. The narrator taken a firm determination that he will have Ranga married. The narrator thought of Ramarao's niece, a person called Ramarao. He had a niece. She was a pretty girl of 11 and had come to stay with him. She was from a big town indeed, so she knew how to play musical instruments like veena and harmonium. She had also a sweet voice. Both her parents had died and her uncle had brought her home. The narrator thought that this girl would be a suitable match for Ranga. Now see here, when Ranga told that he don't want to get married any girl, he want to marry a girl whom he admired, whom he like, a mature girl. But here the narrator, he wished that he will have Ranga get married. And he looked for a girl, and he came across a girl indeed, who was Ramarao's niece, a pretty girl of 11-year-old. Now this girl, she had been from a big town Her parents are dead. Now she lives with her uncle. It is her uncle who brought her in his home. Now, something special about this girl is that she is a singer. Her voice is melodious. Her voice is very nice and sweet. Moreover, she is an instrument player. She played veena and harmonium very well. So the narrator thought that this girl could be the best girl for Ranga. This girl should be a suitable bride for Ranga. This is the determination. This is the point of view of the narrator. He wished that Ranga could get married to this girl. Since the narrator was a frequent visitor to Ramarao's house, the girl was quite free with him. Her name was Ratna. Now see here, the narrator, he was a frequent visitor to the house of Ramarao. Thus, there happened to be a free relationship between this girl and the narrator. And this narrator could speak freely to this girl because he was a frequent visitor. This girl's name is Ratna. The next morning, the narrator asked Ramarao's wife to send Ratna to his house to fetch buttermilk. Next morning, this narrator, he asked Ramarao's wife to send Ratna to his house to fetch buttermilk, and it happened so. Ratna came wearing a grand sari. The narrator asked her to sit in his room and sing a song. Now this time Ratna had come to the house of the narrator, and the narrator asked her to sit down and sing a song. Meanwhile, he called for Ranga. Meanwhile, Ranga comes to the house of narrator. While she was singing the song, Ranga reached the door of narrator's house. As I told you, Ratna is a very good singer. As she was singing the song, at that moment, Ranga arrived at the house of the narrator. He stood at the threshold. He stood at the door. He did not want to interrupt Ratna. So he did not enter into the house, but he was curious to see the singer. He liked the song very much. He liked the voice very much. So he wanted to see the singer. Who was this singer? So he entered carefully into the house in order to have a look on the singer who was singing the song. He saw Ratna there in the house of narrator. As he looked inside the house, suddenly Ratna stopped singing. She felt displeased, or she felt frustrated at the presence of a stranger, because this Ranga for her was a stranger indeed. So she got little bit hesitant, she got little bit frustrated, she stopped singing. At that moment, Ranga felt disappointed. Why? He thought that he would have interrupted Ratna. Ranga came in and sat on a chair. Ratna stood at a distance, her head lowered Ranga repeatedly looked at her. He said that his arrival had stopped the singing, so he would like to leave, but he didn't. Now, for a formality, he says that he had interrupted the song, therefore he must leave the house, but he did not move. Ranga ran inside. Ratna ran inside, overcome by shyness. At that moment, she ran inside out of shyness. Ranga asked the narrator who the girl was and if she was married or not. This is the information that he wanted to know about Ratna. And the narrator replied that she was married a year ago. Ranga felt disappointed. Then he left as he had work at home. Now, as soon as Ranga discovered that this girl is married, he was disappointed, and then he left the place saying that he had some work at home. The narrator went to Shastriji the next morning. He told him to keep everything ready to read the stars. The narrator tutored him in all that he wanted him to say. Now, this is the plan of the narrator. The narrator, in order to make Ranga ready for the marriage, he had gone to seek the help of Shastriji. Shastriji, that means the one who reads the stars, the one who had command on astrology, who know the future of someone. So this Shastriji, is a very wise person who would foretell the future. So he go to the Shastriji and tells him all things related to Ratna as well as Ranga. And he asked that same thing to tell Ranga when he comes to Shastriji. The narrator found no change in Ranga when he met him that afternoon. Now, it was in the morning when the narrator had been to the Shastriji. Now, this is in the afternoon when he meet Ranga and find that he was in gloom and disappointment. He seemed to be lost in thought when he told the narrator that he had an headache. The narrator perceived that Ranga is frustrated, Ranga is downhearted or disappointed, and he asked the narrator, but he asked Ranga, but Ranga said that he had headache. The narrator suggested him that they should see Shastriji. This is the plan of narrator. Narrator then suggests that it seems that you are lost in thoughts and you are very much frustrated, and better if we go to Shastriji, he will tell us the future. He will tell us the things that are going in your mind. Thus, he planned to take Ranga to the Shastriji. Ranga accompanied the narrator without any protest. Without any protest, he accompanied the narrator. When this Ranga and the narrator reached the house of Shastriji, Shastriji turned towards Ranga and asked him what he can do to him. At this, the narrator says to Shastriji that Rangappa seemed to have something in his mind, and they have come to Shastriji in order to know what is the frustration, what is the disappointment or the thoughts that were moving in the mind of Rangappa. And he asked him, what worrying Rangappa? Then Shastriji pretended to take out his paraphernalia. He moved his lips, then counted on his fingers. After doing some calculations, some pretension, he said Ranga that he is thinking about a girl. It is a matter about a girl. At this, the narrator asked him who was the girl. Now this is the part that is played by the narrator. Even though the narrator tutored him about all things that he has to say before Ranga, now he is acting on it. Now this narrator asked, who is this girl? What could be the name of this girl? Shastriji then gave a list of some names including Ratna. Indirectly, the Shastriji tells the name. He gives a clue that it is something that found in the ocean. And they guessed the name. Finally, Ratna was declared. The name of Ratna was announced by the narrator, and thus this link is made. Thus, the author, the narrator, convinced Ranga to have his heart and mind focused on her. Then surprisingly, the narrator told Shastriji that the girl in the Ramarao's house was Ratna. He asked Shastriji if there any chance of their negotiation. Shastriji said definitely. There was both surprise and happiness on Ranga's face. But the narrator said that the girl was married. Ranga was again disappointed on hearing this. Now see here how the events go, how the things happen. The narrator had taken him to the Shastriji so that he could develop a kind of emotional bonding. He could know what is going in the mind of Ranga. And indirectly, the narrator made Shastriji to point out towards the girl who was in the house of Ramarao. He asked furthermore about the chance of negotiation, about the chance of their marriage, whether this thing will succeed or not from Shastriji. And Shastriji nodded. Shastriji assured that the negotiation will be fruitful. It will work out. It will succeed. And then, with both surprise and happiness, Ranga felt both surprised and happy. But one condition is put before Ranga by the narrator, that the girl was married. Ranga was again disappointed on hearing this fact. Now, disappointed, downhearted, Ranga and narrator, they are going back to his house. Meanwhile, on their way, the narrator and Rangappa passed by Ramarao's house. The narrator and Rangappa or Ranga passed by the house of Ramarao. At that time, Ratna was standing alone at the door. That time, Ratna was standing alone at the door. The narrator asked permission from Ranga so that he could go and see the girl. And thus the narrator went in alone and came out a little later. He told Ranga that the girl was not married. Now this is the thing that is done by the narrator. The narrator knew that this girl is not married, but in order to develop an interest in the heart of Ranga, he cooked this story. He cooked this story of Ranga's marriage. He came after a while and he informs the he informs Ranga that the girl was not married. It was a false report, it was a false information that he received regarding the girl. And this time, Rangappa, he felt the joy. He felt happiness. He asked the narrator that is it so? Is it a true information? So the narrator answered that it's true. The girl is not married. He asked Rangappa if he had been thinking of her. At this time the narrator said that he had been thinking of her or not. Rangappa replied that he wanted to marry Ratna. Rangappa or Ranga at the last, he agreed to marry Ratna. This is the way in which the narrator, when he was determined and he planned the marriage of Ranga and Ratna. In this way, Ranga and Ratna finally got married. Now after some years, Ranga invited the narrator on the occasion of his son's third birthday. Now the marriage is done. Ranga and Ratna both were married after some years. Ranga invited the narrator to his house. Now it was the occasion of their son's third birthday. He had named the child Shyam after the name of the narrator. Now see here. It was due to the narrator. The name of the narrator is Shyama or Shyam. So he named or he gave that same name to their child, Shyam. And the narrator, when he had been to the house of Ranga, he saw the little boy. He rushed to the narrator, put his arms around the narrator's legs. The narrator kissed him on his cheek and put a ring on his tiny little finger. Now see, this is the gift that is given by the narrator. A tiny little ring. A ring was given or put on the tiny little finger of Shyam, who is the son of Ranga and Ratna. And thus they celebrated the birthday of their son. Now, Ranga believed that it was due to the narrator that Ranga and Ratna had got married. Therefore, the name of the narrator had been given to the name of their son. This time, Ranga's wife was 8 months pregnant. Then Rangappa had called his sister to help Ratna. Now they led a happy life. They had a child whose third birthday they have celebrated, and this time Ranga's wife Ratna is once again pregnant. She is 8 months pregnant. Therefore, in order to help Ratna, Ranga had called his sister so that she could take care of Ratna, and in this way the marriage of Ranga is conducted, even though it was planned by the narrator, and the narrator worked according to his plans and finally got Ranga married to Ratna. Thus they led a happy married and family life.